Aloha, folks, and good morning. I see that, like myself, many of us had a late start, which is typical of our 2 day conference. The first day is so impactful and filled with information, and everyone comes away feeling a little bit more exhausted than when they came into the room. As you heard, my name is Jacqui Hoover. I have the privilege and honor of being the chair for the conference, and with me is Ben Sullivan, who did a deep dive yesterday into the topic of water, energy and water, of course, being so important to the discussion that we're having here over yesterday and today. So one of the things we wanted to talk about, and I wanted to ask you, Ben, if you could give me your um, ideas on what the best takeaways were from yesterday. And I've already told Ben he doesn't get to say Manas Haka or Manas Film. So what were your takeaways?
I think we all saw the same thing, which is that we continue to grow and evolve this transformation in Hawaii about our energy system, and then I was really gifted as somebody who's not versed in water systems to have the expertise of a four-member panel that really walked us through, two water managers from Maui and Oahu, and then two other folks who are very involved in the industry, one at a technical level on the global sense, and then my good friend Lauren Rothvanu, who is very well versed in water management from the community side and from the distributed side. And the conversation was really interesting. We actually did some comparison between kind of the evolution of the energy system and the water system, and really thought about what's happening in terms of price signals and efficiency opportunities, and this really important comparison between kind of central solutions and distributed solutions and how we balance those investment decisions. So I thought it was fascinating. I hope others did as well.
Great. So beyond the deep dive, we also had some really thought-provoking discussions yesterday. And as you heard during the cyber discussion, as one of the examples, we went into discussion about AI, which is top of mind for a lot of people. And I think for those who are less versed in the concept and the context of AI, it gave some really good insights. And I think that's a really good example of how during this conference, even though we lay out our program and so forth in advance, we are able to pivot and have really meaningful, relevant conversations. AI being just one of the examples, but also I hope that everyone who attends this conference recognizes it's a really good, safe space for us to have really awkward and sometimes difficult discussions. That's something that we sometimes feel when we're out in our community. How do we have these discussions so that people feel safe? And we also recognize that we do have the shared responsibility. And I think that came out very clear through all of the panels and featured speakers yesterday, as well as with Ben's deep dive on water. And for those of you who are not familiar with our Hawaiian Olelo, our language, I've had a couple of people say, why water? This is an energy conference. And besides the obvious reasons about energy and water that Ben will discuss a little bit about, in Hawaiian Olelo, in our language, vai is water, and at the same time, vai means wealth. So for us, our wealth is measured in our water, and for those of you who, are questioning this, we look at the energy, which is very important to keeping us wealthy with our vai. So Ben, if you wouldn't mind, one of the questions that I'd like to ask you is if you could just give us a brief background of what Oahu and Maui are doing and why the discussion you had yesterday is so important.
Sure. So I think Barry Usagawa and John Stufflebean were the individuals who work for the municipalities on those islands and really talked about the intense pressures on the water systems that they have the responsibility to manage. It's one of the things we talked about in the deep dive session yesterday was it's that we all as consumers get to turn the tap and expect fresh, clean drinking water to come out, and it's sometimes is invisible, and all the things that happen behind the scene there are as if by magic. We've had this very same conversation about electricity, and really, you know, all of us want to see more conservation. Myself was kind of challenging both of those gentlemen who I learned and got to know John, and I've known Barry for quite a while, and kind of saying, hey, if we're going to spend $100 million here on this desalination plant to get fresh water from the sea, are there other things we should be thinking about more intensely? And I think they both agreed that there are, and the trick is that we have to make this transformation that I think everyone in this room is familiar with, from consumer to community member, where we're taking ownership ourselves of those solutions, because it's not John's or Barry's responsibility alone, right? They can't do this alone. It's no longer this system that just is invisible in the background where we kind of import all the resources we need and take the resources that we see locally. It's actually a system that has to rely on everyone's participation and active participation. The more pressure is on it, and the more those decisions matter for our communities.
Yes, thank you very much for that. And again, we go back to that concept of shared responsibility. And I think everyone who attends the energy conference every year, or even if this is your first year, you're all familiar with that concept of who's responsible for this, and wanting to make sure that we provide our constituency, our consumers for some of you, our users for others, our community, our neighbors, our elders and everyone with the resources that they need to survive in our economy. So speaking of our economy, the geopolitics of where we are right now are certainly challenging. And Ben, as someone who is a long time, almost a lifelong Kama'aina resident of Hawaii, and also someone who has played in both the public and private sector arenas, you've helped both influence as well as shape policy and so forth. Where do you see our energy moving? I know that there were some challenges and challenging discussions yesterday about some of the policies, some of the permitting, and so forth. And where do you see us right now, and where do you see us in the future?
So anybody who might think this is an easy transition is not in this room, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. We have challenges. We have immense challenges. I think the one thing I want to say, and just maybe dive right into the awkward conversation, is if folks were here in 2024 and Governor Green stood up here and said, hey, we're going to contemplate LNG, that's maybe the elephant in the room right now. And the trade-off is one of, do we want to be self-reliant? Do we want to take care of ourselves and assume the risks associated with doing that? Or do we want to continue to extend our dependence on this outside source of energy that is really invisible to us, and any impacts of that extraction of energy are invisible to us, and we just are consumers? So, you know, the thing that I see when I look around this room, and I look around every time we get folks together, whether it's for a Green Energy Expo or for an event like this with professionals and policymakers, is I see people solving problems and getting better and better at it, and more people coming into the space to do that. Jacqui, you give me a lot of credit. I was there in the room with some really smart people in many occasions, and just really an observer as much as anything else. Certainly there's, every once in a while I get to give a little nudge and say, hey, let's keep going in this direction. But, you know, one of the things I'm really proud of is having spent a little bit of time with KIUC and from 2009 to 2011. And there were some really hard questions that we were wrestling with at that time. But everybody in that organization said, we know there's risk. We're going forward because that's the long-term goal, and it's the best thing for our community. And I think they have shown that we can solve these problems. I think right now we're talking about either falling back to a solution that we know will reliably do something, may or may not cost more, and will really not require a lot of nearly as much interface from all these people in this room and all the people around the state who are employed, who are innovating, who are finding solutions, whether it's technology solutions or policy solutions or any of that. Or we can go back and do this thing that we used to do in the 20th century, which is just depend and be vulnerable to that exposure. So I think it's really clear what the choice is, and I hope we get there, but I'm really looking forward to that discussion today, because certainly there is a practical side of this. We got to run the grid. We need a little bit of fossil fuels. Certainly only a little bit, and less every day. But it's what we're talking about, so let's do it.
Great, thank you so much. And I appreciate that you recognize that that was a leading question for you, because it does turn us right back to the discussions that we had yesterday, the discussions that we'll be having today. And I really feel it important that those of you who do attend this conference, who have something to contribute, recognize how very valuable and important all that you contribute respectively and collectively to the space that we choose to operate in, how very valuable that is and how important it is. And I always am a little bit concerned because we do have awkward discussions, we do have difficult discussions, and occasionally, just very occasionally, but I will get some feedback from a couple of our attendees or even some of our panelists sometimes who feel that somehow the space they occupy or the work that they're doing is being diminished. And I don't want that to be ever the case for any of you, because it's really important that we recognize that, again, that concept of shared responsibility. And for those of you who are not from Hawaii, you often, and you may not have heard this word before, but for those of us from Hawaii, we tend to bandy around the word kuleana. And we often say, well, kuleana means responsibility. The truth is, kuleana means responsibility born of privilege. And I think all of us in this room need to recognize we have a true privilege in working in the space we work in and in sharing and helping to make life better and to move us towards things like fulfilling our renewable energy mandates for Hawaii. And I want all of you to feel very comfortable that what you're doing is valuable and important. The panel discussions we have are valuable, very important. And I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but if any of you see me, I want you to be as comfortable as some of the others have been to share with me both your thoughts, your takeaways as well. And when I say that, I mean not just the positive, but also the negative, and also your thoughts for discussions that we have not had and that we need to have. Because the one thing I've learned in the 13 years that I've been attending this conference, and more recently as having the honor of being the program chair, is that all of you individually and collectively are forward thinking. So with that in mind, Ben, one of the things that I took away from yesterday's discussion was some of that forward thinking that was, manifesting and that people were having. And I wanted to ask you if you could share with the audience what is one or more of the forward thinking takeaways that you came up with besides what the water discussion you provided us with.
Absolutely. So I mean, we've got a room full of people in a program that really says, hey, what are the live issues that we have to address? We have this temporary bump in the cost of solar right now and the question that is in front of us is, does that mean we have to shift course, or does that mean we just have to stay the course and figure a way around it? Because it's the right thing to do. It's proving itself to work for grid reliability. It's proving itself to work for affordability. And these changes, this volatility we're seeing, whether it's in the fossil fuel price market or just in the political arena, is something that will pass, right? So I think understanding our direction and continuing to move forward and be open about the challenges we're facing and how to resolve them. Another aspect of that very same conversation was the permitting piece. And I, as somebody who worked at the city and county and wanted to convince my allies and friends that we were making progress, that was a difficult and painful conversation, because every time I looked at them, I'd say, hey, I know they're working really hard internally. I know you're going to see progress. And they kind of looked back at me, and whether it was Ted or Rocky or anyone in the solar industry, they were like, yeah, okay, Ben, we're still waiting. But I guess what I'm saying is the problems are clear, and they're ours, right? So this choice, and I certainly don't mean to diminish the attempt that everyone is trying to make, whether it's Governor Green or somebody else, to solve these problems. But the choice we have is, do we give away the agency that we have to solve these problems ourselves, and go back to fossil fuels, or do we do the hard work, which you're all doing, of resolving these things on the ground here, and then truly own the system in the sense of being part of the solution? So it's Hawaiian Electric and everyone that's participating, and it really already is that. I think is the amazing thing. I think the electrical workers union, right? These people know how to do large-scale solar. They have trained. They have figured it out. The innovators like Shifted Energy have figured out things that are now being shared around the country and around the world. The policy innovation that's happened in Hawaii has certainly spread as a result. So there's so many things you all have figured out. And again, I feel like a lucky observer in many, many, many of these instances. But let's be proud of that. Let's continue it, and let's recognize maybe that the real key here, the real nuance in terms of looking at these two options is, one is we continue to own those things. We continue to take responsibility for those problems as well as the benefits of the solutions, versus handing off both to somebody from the outside.
Thank you for that, because one of the things that you just said, I think came loud and clear through yesterday's discussion, is this room, this group that we have the privilege of working with, are really on the forefront of understanding that our conversations do not need to be either or. I think you're all leading the way to and we also are leading the way for discussions about if. If we do this, then what are the consequences? If we don't do this, then what are the consequences? And I can share with you that oftentimes when, and Ben can correct me if I'm wrong, but when I'm in the room with policymakers, oftentimes it does become an either-or conversation. They're trying to work a bill or some other mandate, and they're thinking about what to exclude rather than to include. And one of the things that we've heard repeatedly yesterday during the discussions about that shared responsibility is how all of us can work together in this shared space. And so, Ben, I wanted to ask you if you could share with us some feedback. We have had challenges, like every legislative session, with some of the bills and some of the philosophies that are moving forward. And I'm wondering if you can share with us, a question came up yesterday, how do we merge our efforts better so that we are sharing a collective voice where needed with our legislators and other policymakers?
Easy question.
Yes, exactly.
I'm going to think about that for a minute and take the pause that is necessary to collect my thoughts, as if this were a job interview. So how do we do that? I don't know every way we do that, but I know one way we do that is instead of going to the legislature for solutions, we come to the legislature with solutions, and I think that's happening by and large. And I think this notion of certainty and consistency is critical. We've had this conversation too many times, but consistently knowing what our North Star is and continuing to move towards it is essential for business especially, but for community as well, to say this is the mark. I think the conversation in the energy space right now is the right one, which is to say affordability and reliability are what it's all about today. We have to acknowledge and own that. And the question just becomes, what is the both short-term and long-term best way to get there? One of the things that I'm excited about, Jacqui, is as we see the pain that this spike is causing, and I think the avoided cost on Oahu went from 16 to 26, 28 cents. I can't remember the exact numbers, but it was like 45% change in avoided cost from April to May as a result of the almost 70% dependence on fossil fuel. And thinking about how do we solve that, we can talk about the longer term solutions, but let's really make sure we're also talking about the relief that needs to be provided. And it's already there. Heat pumps is just one example. We know there's a device that can save a family $800 a year. We know that there are tens of thousands of households that could benefit from those solutions. We haven't quite figured out how to pay for that at the scale we need to, but the payback is like 3 years on the incremental cost of a heat pump versus an electric resistance or gas water heater. So the solution is right in front of us. And that starts to address the problem today, which is really part of the pressure of this conversation. So let's solve first, let's prioritize that. Second, let's say what's next, as opposed to looking at a 30-year horizon, which we have done for a long time in the utility business and pretended that we're certain about what's going to happen 30 years from now. Let's be most certain about what we're going to do next. And right now, again, that next is very much potentially solar and storage on the interim to bring more reliability to the grid. And then that opens up so many other conversations about solutions that, yes, there are challenges for, but they're challenges we own, whether it's offshore wind or it's geothermal or it's greater efficiency, like doubling and tripling efficiency. I can't remember how many sessions we've kind of flirted with the idea that, hey, Hawaii Energy has been working on a pretty flat number for a long time. Why not press that button and say more help to people who need it through Hawaii Energy and all the contractors that work with them to really put the solution where it's needed, as opposed to this notion of everybody gets a piece of it, right? So there quick thoughts there. I don't know if that's useful.
No, I think that is useful, and I think that one of the topics that came through, whether it was spoken out loud on the various panels and featured speakers and so forth, or just by what they were saying spoken quietly, but the predictability, and I am really concerned that not only do we not have the predictability that all of you in this room who are really moving forward depend on, whether it's for financing or for permitting or whatever. We need to work collectively, and I heard that several times yesterday, working collectively, taking the shared responsibility, and trying to do a better job of, people will say that you build your own luck, and I think what I'm hearing is that we need to build our own predictability. So that goes back to what you were saying about going to legislature with solutions, not with problems. And I believe that Representative Iligan yesterday, when he was discussing his speed concept and trying to make permitting more effective, more efficient, and so forth, he inadvertently, I think, shared with us one of the things that I think the people in this room are really well suited for and do a great job of, and that we need to continue working on. Oftentimes, our deciders, our policymakers, our legislators, if you heard what Representative Iligan said yesterday, they're not talking to each other. So we take to them problems, and one legislator hears, oh, this is a problem. Someone else is hearing a different problem. And I really believe that all of us in this room are the people who need to weave those messages and the solutions for the problems that the legislators are facing, because those are the concerns that we're faced. We need to weave that messaging together and also make sure that the messages we weaved are shared multiple times. We often will say, or at least I know in the past, I've often said, oh, well, I'm going to go speak to Senator Jacqui because he's an innovator and he's forward-thinking and so forth. And then I've left it there because I then expect Senator Jacqui to do the heavy lifting and convince his colleagues and others to see things the way I've just explained it to him and that he agrees with. And so, Ben, I wanted to ask your thoughts, having been in that arena yourself, where do you think the vulnerabilities are and where do you think the strengths are with a group like this, who we are all in different lanes, but I think this conference and other opportunities we have, we're learning more and more every day how to find the points of intersection and merging lanes without collision. And so I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that.
I mean, I think we got to get in the room with each other as much as we reasonably can, and I'm not proposing every week or more meetings or anything like that. But I think, you know, the Zoom box can be a difficult place to really understand somebody who you don't agree with. And that is, I think, one of our struggles. I think we come into this room and the magic is that we get to sit outside and say, hey, I'm not sure if I agree with you, but can I understand better where you're coming from? And that's where the magic happens, I think, is really diving into those questions. And again, you know, I mean, we're going to do that. You guys have this LNG proposal, which again, to me, is just such a huge policy discussion right now and so important. You know, we can do this more reliably and we can do this cheaper with our own local solutions is my view, but maybe it's wrong, I don't know. If you want to check out what we're putting out there on that, we're forming a coalition called Local Power Hawaii, and we certainly have a view on what that is and how we can do it. And it's really about a message to the community, because right now we're unfortunately what you're asking for, which is to say, how do we have a shared conversation, is not really what's happening, and there's a little bit of a messaging contest in terms of which one's better without really getting into the details of what we need. And I think Rep. Lowen will do a great job kind of sussing that out later in the upcoming panels. And I know that Rick Rochelle is somebody who has always been objective in his career and said, here's the facts. And hopefully when the JIRA folks and Mark Glick are able to connect with them, we can hear where people are and where the gaps are and what we should be doing going forward. So I think, again, let's have those difficult conversations. Let's know that everybody wants more affordability and more reliability, and that we're seeking solutions that really matter, both short-term and long-term, for people in Hawaii. And who is the best to decide that? It's people in Hawaii. It's not necessarily corporations from outside or shareholders. It's people who have stake, and I think some people can be both, but who is speaking at any one moment, and who are they speaking for is an important question and part of that.
Right, thank you. And as part of that conversation, we are so fortunate that we have many people from outside Hawaii who come and contribute to this conversation, and those perspectives and experiences and expertise are so valuable to what we have. And one of the things that came loud and clear for me yesterday is that we are able to cross sector lines and recognize that we have points of impact, common impact, and maybe part of what I'm talking about is identifying what do I have. I'm not in the solar sector, but what do I have that I recognize from some of the panelists as a point of common impact that I should be having conversations with my friends in the solar sector, and maybe together we can resolve some of the concerns, whether it's policy making or permitting or whatnot, in moving forward by sharing that this is not a single sector effort. This is a multi-sector effort. And for those of you who've been to this conference before, you've heard me say that we really need to recognize what our limitations are, and from those limitations, figure out what the resources are, and come at this from an assets perspective rather than deficits perspective. And one of the things that I know several of the senators have told me is it's difficult for them to ignore what the industry wants when we come at them with assets and we come at them with how we're making changes that are for the betterment of their voters. Because remember, at the end of the day, they're all looking at voters, numbers of voters and what their voters are saying. So with that, we've got a couple of minutes left. I was wondering if there are any questions from the audience. And Ben, if you have any last thoughts.
If we have time for questions, great. You and I have a common friend who I just want to reflect on, who passed away last week, Riley Saito. A lot of you probably know Riley. I had the privilege of working with him when I was at the county, and he was always somebody who had tremendous vision and enthusiasm for solutions that were just wildly outside the box. I know he was very close to you, so you know, I think looking at Riley as an example of the kind of people we have working for our community is really what this is all about.
Thank you. And, you know, for those of you who were in the hydrogen sector, we also lost Mitch Ewing, another strong contributor, and we've lost others. And that brings to mind an important point about yesterday's discussion. Some of the expertise, some of the wisdom that we have, some of the forward thinking, those individuals, we're starting to lose them. We really need to keep their legacy in mind and give opportunity and voice to continuing their work. And I really should commend all of you who make that commitment every day to work in. And I'm going to be honest about it. This is a difficult space to work in. So thank you all so much. Thank you for being here. And Ben, thank you so much. If you all wouldn't give me a hand in applauding Ben and his continuous contribution to the conference and to the sector.
Aloha, thank you.